You think people make you angry? They don't. You do. Every time you let someone's words ruin your day, every time you replay a conversation in your head for hours, every time you feel that burn in your chest because someone disrespected you, that's not them controlling you. That's you handing them the remote control to your emotions. Here's the truth most people never accept. Nobody can make you feel anything without your permission. They can say whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. But the anger, the frustration, the bitterness, that's yours. You created it. And here's the good news. If you create it, you can stop it. We've been taught that anger is a natural response, that if someone crosses the line, you're supposed to feel something. And maybe that's true, but feeling it and feeding it are two different things. Most people feel anger and then water it. They think about it. They talk about it. They build a case in their head. And before they know it, that small spark has become a fire that's burning them from the inside out. But what if you didn't? What if the moment someone tried to bother you, you just didn't let it land? What if you could hear disrespect and feel nothing? See betrayal and stay calm? Experience rejection and keep moving? That's not detachment. That's mastery. And if you've ever felt tired of being angry, tired of letting people live in your head, tired of giving your peace away to people who don't deserve it, then keep listening. Because what comes next might free you. Let's talk about anger. Real anger. Not the kind you see in movies where someone flips a table and storms out, but the quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest and burns slowly. The kind that keeps you up at night replaying conversations. The kind that makes you tense every time you see a certain name pop up on your phone. That's the anger most people live with. And they don't even realize it's killing them, because anger isn't loud. It's not always obvious. Sometimes it just looks like stress, like frustration, like being constantly on edge. You wake up already annoyed. Someone asks you a simple question and you snap. You scroll through social media and everything irritates you. And you tell yourself it's just a bad day. But it's not. It's a bad pattern. And that pattern started the moment you decided that other people's actions had the power to define your emotional state. Here's what I mean. Someone disrespects you, and instead of letting it pass, you keep it. You think about it. You build a story around it. You tell yourself, they shouldn't have said that. They shouldn't have done that. They need to apologize. They need to understand. And every time you think that thought, you're feeding the anger. You're keeping it alive. You're giving it permission to stay. And the crazy part? The person who triggered it has no idea. They've moved on. They're living their life. And you're stuck. Stuck in a mental loop that's slowly draining your energy, your joy, your peace. I've been there. I used to think that if I let things go, it meant I was weak. That if I didn't react, people would think they could walk all over me. So I held grudges. I stayed angry. I made sure people knew when they crossed the line. And you know what that got me? Nothing. Nothing but high blood pressure and wasted time. Because the people I was angry at, they didn't care. They weren't losing sleep. They weren't thinking about me. I was the only one suffering. And that realization hit me like a truck. I was sitting in my car one day after an argument. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing, and I thought to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I letting this person have this much control over me? And that's when it clicked. They didn't have control over me. I gave it to them. I gave them the power to make me feel this way. I gave them access to my peace. And the moment I realized that, everything changed. Because if I gave them the power, I could take it back. And so can you. But first, you have to understand where the anger is really coming from. Because most of the time, it's not about what they said or did. It's about what it triggered in you. It's about the story you told yourself, the meaning you attached to it, the insecurity it poked. And once you see that, once you realize that your anger is just your ego trying to protect itself, you stop taking things so personally. You stop letting people bother you. You stop giving your energy to things that don't deserve it. That's where everything started to change. Here's something most people don't understand. Being bothered is a choice. I know that sounds harsh. I know you're probably thinking, no, it's not. People do things that are genuinely disrespectful, hurtful, wrong. And you're right. They do. But here's the thing. Their actions are their actions. Your reaction is yours. And those are two separate things. You can't control what people say or do. You can't control their intentions, their behaviour, their character. But you can control how much space you give it in your mind. You can control whether you let it ruin your day or whether you let it pass. Most people don't do that. They hear something they don't like and immediately internalise it. They take it personally. They make it mean something about them. Someone criticises them and suddenly they're questioning their worth. Someone ignores them and suddenly they're not good enough. Someone disrespects them and suddenly they're a victim. But none of that is true. It's just a story. A story your mind created to make sense of what happened. And the problem is, once you believe that story, it becomes your reality. Let me give you an example. Someone at work takes credit for your idea. You find out in a meeting and instantly you feel that heat rising. Your jaw tightens, your mind starts racing. How dare they? That was my idea. Everyone's going to think I'm useless. I need to say something. I need to expose them. And now you're angry. Not just for a few minutes, for hours, maybe even days. You talk to your friends. You replay the meeting in your head. You imagine all the things you should have said. And the more you think about it, the angrier you get. But here's the truth. That person taking credit didn't make you angry. You made yourself angry by deciding that their actions said something about you. By deciding that your worth is tied to whether people acknowledge your contributions. By deciding that you need to be seen to matter. And all of that, that's optional. You could have just as easily looked at that situation and thought, wow, they must be really insecure to need to steal someone else's idea, and then moved on. You could have let it say something about them instead of something about you, but most people don't. They take the bait, they let their ego get involved. And that's when the anger takes over, because anger isn't really about the other person. It's about you. It's about your expectations, your beliefs, your need to be respected, valued, understood. And when reality doesn't match those expectations, you feel angry, you feel bothered. But the moment you stop expecting people to act a certain way, the moment you stop needing them to validate you, the moment you accept that people are going to do what they do and it has nothing to do with you, that's when you become unbothered. That's when you regain your power. So why do we react? Why do we let people get under our skin? It's not random. It's not just because they said something mean or did something wrong. It's because they hit a nerve. They triggered something that was already there. An insecurity, a fear, a wound that never fully healed. And the angrier you get, the deeper that wound is. Think about it. If someone calls you something you know you're not, it doesn't bother you. If someone says you're a terrible cook and you know you can't cook, you laugh it off. But if someone calls you selfish, lazy, unreliable, and there's a part of you that worries it might be true, that's when it stings. That's when you get defensive. That's when you feel the need to prove them wrong. Because that's not what they said. It's about what you believe. And if you're not secure in who you are, if you're not confident in your own worth, then every comment, every criticism, every little thing someone does becomes a threat. And you have to defend yourself. You have to fight back. You have to make sure they know they're wrong. But that's exhausting, and it's a losing battle. Because you can't control what people think. You can't make everyone see you the way you want to be seen. And the more you try, the more power you give them. I used to be so reactive. Someone would say something and I'd immediately feel the need to correct them, to explain myself, to make sure they understood my side, and I thought that I was standing up for myself. I thought that was being strong, but really it was just insecurity. It was me needing their approval. I need them to see me as good, smart, and valuable. And whenever they didn't, I felt threatened. I felt I had to do something, say something, prove something. But the truth is, secure people don't need to prove anything. They don't need to defend themselves every time someone has an opinion. They don't need to correct every misunderstanding because they know who they are. And they know other people's perceptions don't change that. That's the difference. Reactive people are controlled by their need for validation. Unbothered people are controlled by their own inner knowing. And that shift from external validation to internal security, that's where freedom begins. Because once you stop needing people to see you a certain way, they lose the ability to bother you. They can say whatever they want, think whatever they want, do whatever they want, and it doesn't touch you because your worth isn't up for debate. Now let's talk about detachment. Because this is where most people get confused. They think detachment means not caring, that it means shutting down emotionally, that it means becoming cold, distant, disconnected. But that's not what it is. Detachment is caring without being consumed. It's loving without losing yourself. It's being present without being dependent on the outcome. And when it comes to anger, detachment is everything. Because you can care about someone and still not let their actions control your mood. You can value a relationship and still not take everything personally. You can have standards and still not be bothered when people don't meet them. Detachment gives you space. Space to see things clearly. Space to respond instead of react. Space to choose how much energy you want to give something. And that space is where your power lives. Because when you're too attached, when you're too emotionally invested in how things should be, you lose perspective. You lose control. You become prisoner of your own expectations. Let me paint a picture. You're in a relationship. You've been putting in effort, showing up, being supportive. And the other person, they're distant. They're not reciprocating. They're not meeting you halfway. And you feel it. You feel the imbalance. And it bothers you. You start to feel resentful, frustrated, angry, because you're giving and they're not. And every time they don't text back, every time they cancel plans, every time they show you through their actions that you're not a priority, you take it personally. You make it mean something about you. You start questioning your worth, wondering what's wrong with you, why you're not enough, and that anger builds. But here's the thing, if you were detached, none of that would bother you. Not because you don't care, but because you'd see the situation for what it is. Someone who's not showing up, someone who's not meeting your needs, someone who's showing you through their actions that they're not the right fit. And instead of being angry, you just accept it and walk away. No drama, no resentment, no need to make them understand. Just a calm recognition that this isn't working and a decision to choose yourself. That's detachment. It's not cold. It's not indifferent. It's just clear. It's seeing reality without the emotional filter. And once you master that, once you learn to care without being consumed, nothing can bother you. Because you're no longer dependent on people acting a certain way for you to feel okay. You're okay regardless. And that's freedom. Here's where it gets interesting. Most of the anger you feel isn't about what actually happened. It's about the story you told yourself about what happened. Someone doesn't text you back. That's a fact. But the story you tell yourself? They're ignoring me. They don't care. I'm not important to them. That's not a fact. That's an interpretation. And that interpretation is what angers you. Because now it's not just a missed text. It's about your worth, your value, your place in their life. And that hurts. But what if you told yourself another story? What if instead of they're ignoring me, you thought they're probably busy? Or they're dealing with their own stuff. Or even maybe they're just not good at texting. Suddenly, the anger disappears because the situation didn't change. Your story did. And that's the key. You have the power to choose what meaning you assign to things. You have the power to decide whether something is a personal attack or just a neutral event. And the more you practice telling yourself empowering stories instead of disempowering ones, the less you'll be bothered. I'll give you a real example. A few years ago, I had a friend who stopped reaching out. We talked all the time. And then suddenly, nothing. No calls. No texts. No effort. And at first, I was hurt. Then I was angry. I thought, after everything I did for them, this is how they treat me? I made it about me. I meant I wasn't worth their time. That I wasn't a good enough friend. And I carried that anger for months. But one day I met them. And we talked. And I found out they were going through something heavy. Something they didn't know how to share. Something that made them pull away from everyone. And in that moment, I realised how wrong my story was. It wasn't about me at all. It never was. And all that anger I carried, it was based on a story I made up. A story that wasn't true. And that taught me something. Most of the time, what people do has nothing to do with you. They're dealing with their own pain, their own fears, their own limitations. And if you make it about you, if you create a story where you're the victim, you'll be angry forever. But if you can step back and see the situation without making it personal, you'll realise there's nothing to be angry about. Just people being people, doing the best they can with what they have. So how do you stop reacting? How do you train yourself to stay calm when everything in you wants to explode? It starts with awareness. You have to catch yourself in the moment. You have to notice when you're about to react and pause. Just pause. Don't say anything. Don't do anything. Just breathe. And in that pause, ask yourself a simple question. Is this worth my peace? Most of the time, the answer is no. But you won't know that if you don't give yourself the space to think. Because reaction is automatic. It's instinctive. It happens before you realise it. But the response is intentional. It's deliberate. It's you taking control of your emotions instead of letting them control you. And that takes practice. It takes you catching yourself 100 times before it becomes natural. But every time you do, every time you choose not to react, you're building a new pattern. You're training your brain to stay calm under pressure. And over time, that becomes your default. Let me tell you how it looks in real life. You're in a meeting. Someone undermines you in front of everyone. Your first instinct? To defend yourself. To snap back. To make sure everyone knows they're wrong. But instead you pause. You take a breath. You let the comment sit there. And then you calmly address it. Or you don't address it at all, because you realise it's not worth the energy. That person isn't worth the energy. And by not reacting, by staying composed, you actually gain more respect than if you had fought back. Because people can see the difference. They can see when someone is controlled by their emotions and when someone is in control of them. And the person in control, that's the person people admire. That's the person people trust. That's the person who has real power. Not the loud one, not the reactive one. The calm one. One that doesn't need to prove anything. The one who knows their worth and doesn't let anyone shake it. That's mastery. And it's available to you. But you have to practice. You have to choose it every single day, in every single moment, until it becomes who you are. One of the biggest reasons people stay angry is because they need to be right. They need to win the argument. They need to prove their point. They need the other person to admit they were wrong. And as long as that need exists, they'll never be free, because most people will never admit they're wrong. Most people will never see your side. Most people will never give you the closure you're looking for. And if you're waiting for that, you'll be waiting forever. You have to let go of the need to be right. You have to be okay with people thinking whatever they want to think, even if it's wrong, even if it's unfair, even if it makes you look bad. Because your peace is more important than your reputation. Your freedom is more important than being understood. And the moment you accept that, the moment you stop needing people to see things your way, you become unbothered. You become untouchable. I used to argue with people all the time, not because I liked it, but because I couldn't stand the thought of them being wrong about me. I needed them to know the truth. I needed them to see my side, and I would go back and forth, trying to make them understand. And you know what? It never worked, because people believe what they want to believe, and no amount of explaining will change that. So I stopped trying. I stopped caring if people misunderstood me. I stopped needing to be right. And that was the most liberating thing I've ever done. Because now, when someone has a wrong opinion about me, I just let them. I don't argue. I don't defend. I don't explain. I just move on. And it doesn't bother me. Because I know who I am. And that's enough. Think of your mind like your body. If you're constantly exposed to stress, negativity, drama, your immune system weakens. You get sick easier. You're always tired. You're always on edge. But if you take care of yourself, if you protect your energy, if you build strong boundaries, you become resilient. You become immune. The same is true for your emotions. If you're constantly letting people bother you, if you're always reacting, if you're always angry, your emotional immune system is weak. Everything affects you. Everything gets to you. But if you start building emotional immunity, if you start protecting your peace, if you start choosing not to engage, you become strong. You become unbothered. And that strength doesn't come from avoiding life. It comes from mastering yourself. It comes from knowing what deserves your energy and what doesn't. It comes from being so secure in who you are that nothing external can shake you. And that's built through repetition, through small choices, through daily discipline. Every time you don't react, every time you let something go, every time you choose peace over being right, you're building immunity. And over time, you become the kind of person who nothing can touch. Not because you don't care, but because you care about the right things. And other people's opinions, other people's actions, other people's chaos just isn't one of them. And that brings us here, to the final truth. The ultimate freedom is not caring, not in a nihilistic, nothing matters kind of way, but in a selective, intentional, purposeful way. It's caring deeply about the things that align with your values, your goals, your peace, and not caring at all about the things that don't. It's not caring what people think, not caring if they like you, not caring if they agree with you, not caring if they understand you, because you've realized that their perception of you is none of your business, and their actions towards you say more about them than they ever will about you. That's freedom. Real freedom. It's waking up and not being controlled by anyone, not being affected by anyone, not being bothered by anyone. Because you've built a life, a mindset, an inner world that's so solid, so grounded, so secure that nothing external can disturb it. And people will notice. They will see you are different, that you don't react like you used to, that you don't get bothered like you used to. And some won't understand it. They'll think you're cold. They'll think you don't care. But you'll know the truth. You care more than ever. You just stop wasting your care on people and things that don't deserve it. And that's not cold. That's wisdom. That's maturity. That's strength. And once you get there, once you reach that level of emotional freedom, you'll wonder how you ever lived any other way. Because this is what peace feels like. And nothing, absolutely nothing, is worth giving that up.